I never thought my brother's wedding would be the event that broke our family apart. Weddings are supposed to be about love, joy, and unity. But instead, it turned into the most humiliating night of my life, and ultimately, the night that pushed me to make a decision that shocked everyone. You see, I wasn't just another guest at this wedding. I was the one who paid for it. The venue, the food, the flowers, the DJ, the photographer, you name it, I covered it. Tens of thousands of dollars, countless hours of planning, all poured into making sure my younger brother, Daniel, and his fiancée, Emily, had their dream day. Daniel and I had always been close. With just 2 years between us, we grew up as best friends as much as siblings. We were each other's protectors, confidants, and partners in crime. So when he asked me to help with his wedding, I didn't hesitate. I wanted to give back to him after all the times he had been there for me, but what I didn't realize at the time was that my generosity would be seen not as love, but as weakness. From the moment Emily entered Daniel's life, I tried my best to accept her. She was beautiful, confident, and she carried herself like she belonged in the spotlight. I ignored the subtle remarks she sometimes made at my expense, the little digs disguised as jokes. After all, planning a wedding is stressful, right? Maybe that explained her attitude, or so I thought. When Daniel admitted he was stressed about money, I volunteered to cover most of the expenses. He tried to argue at first, but Emily quickly shut him down with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Your brother wants to help," she said, "and family should support family." I should have noticed then. The way she emphasized family as if my role was to be the silent wallet behind their fairy tale. But I brushed it off. What mattered to me was Daniel's happiness. The months leading up to the wedding were a blur of contracts, calls, and late-night planning sessions. I was knee-deep in vendor negotiations, color schemes, and seating charts. Whenever something went wrong, I fixed it. When a caterer canceled last minute, I found a replacement. When Emily and Daniel argued about the guest list, I smoothed things over. Everyone praised Emily for how beautifully everything was coming together. She smiled, accepted the compliments, and never once mentioned the countless hours I spent behind the scenes. And I told myself I didn't care about recognition. But in truth, deep down, I hoped, no, I expected, that my effort and sacrifice would at least be appreciated. That illusion came crashing down on the night of the wedding. The ceremony was stunning. Daniel looked happier than I'd ever seen him. Emily glowed in her gown. The guests laughed, clapped, and cheered. And as I watched them exchange vows, I felt a sense of pride. All the money, all the stress, it was worth it, I told myself. But then came the reception. That's when everything changed. As I mingled with relatives and listened to people gush about the food and decor, I felt Emily's hand grip my arm. Her smile was tight, her voice low but sharp as a knife. "I think you should leave," she whispered. At first, I thought I misheard. "What?" I asked, blinking in confusion. "You've done enough," she said coldly. "This is our night. People are talking about how much you helped, and honestly, it's making me uncomfortable. You're pulling attention away from me and Daniel. So, please, just go." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I looked around at the flowers I paid for, the band I booked, the venue I rented. Everything in that room existed because of me, and yet I was being told to walk away like an uninvited stranger. I glanced toward Daniel across the room. He was laughing with his friends, oblivious to the scene unfolding just a few feet away. I wanted to call him over, to make him see what was happening. But the look on Emily's face told me it wouldn't matter, and so, humiliated and heartbroken, I walked out. That night, as I lay awake replaying her words, something inside me snapped. I realized Emily had never seen me as family. She had seen me as a tool. A means to an end. And Daniel, blinded by love, had never questioned it. I decided then and there, if I wasn't welcome at their wedding, then my money wasn't welcome either. If you'd like to support me in sharing them, please consider subscribing, it means the world. After walking out of that wedding reception, my heart was pounding. I couldn't believe what had just happened. The humiliation still burned in my chest, but as I replayed everything in my head, I realized this wasn't the first time Emily had treated me this way. In fact, the warning signs had been there all along. I had just been too blinded by my love for Daniel to see them clearly. Let me back up a bit. When Daniel first introduced Emily to the family, I wanted to like her. Truly, I did. She was charming, smart, and carried herself like she belonged in any room she walked into. Daniel was smitten, and that was enough for me. At least in the beginning, but then the little things started adding up. I remember one family dinner not long after they got engaged. We were all sitting around the table, sharing stories from childhood. Daniel started telling a funny memory about how we used to sneak into the kitchen at night to steal cookies. He laughed, saying, "My brother always had the better ideas. He was the mastermind." Emily smiled sweetly, but then she turned to me and said, "Wow, it sounds like you peaked in childhood." Everyone laughed awkwardly, and I forced a smile, but deep down, the comment stung. It wasn't just that one time either. At another gathering, when someone mentioned how generous I was for always helping the family, Emily chimed in with, "Well, some people don't have much else to do, so money is the only way they can contribute." Again, she said it with a smile, as if it were a harmless joke. But the underlying message was clear. I brushed these comments aside, telling myself she was just stressed, or maybe her humor didn't land the way she intended. After all, Daniel seemed happy, and that was what mattered most to me. But the closer we got to the wedding, the more Emily's attitude toward me shifted. When the planning began, Daniel was overwhelmed. Between his job, his student loans, and trying to save for a new apartment, he didn't have the energy or money to manage a massive wedding. That's when I stepped in. I had a stable job, savings in the bank, and honestly, I wanted to help. Daniel and I had been through so much together growing up. This felt like my chance to give back. I covered the venue deposit first, then catering, then flowers, then the DJ. Before I knew it, I was covering practically everything. Tens of thousands of dollars. Daniel protested at first, but Emily always shut him down. "I mean, your brother wants to help," she said one night, her tone sugary sweet. "And it's only right that family supports family." At the time, I didn't think much of it. But looking back, I realized she was never grateful. Not once did she thank me with genuine sincerity. It was as if she felt entitled to my generosity, and the more I helped, the less I seemed to matter. I spent nights researching vendors, comparing prices, and making phone calls. I coordinated schedules, handled cancellations, and even diffused arguments between Daniel and Emily. One time, they were fighting about whether to invite one of Emily's cousins who had caused drama in the past. Daniel didn't want him there, but Emily insisted. I tried to mediate and suggest compromises. Emily snapped at me, saying, "You're not the bride. Maybe you should remember your place." That one cut deep. Still, I kept telling myself it was wedding stress. People say brides can get overwhelmed and lash out. I wanted to believe that once the wedding day arrived, everything would smooth over, but instead, things only escalated. A week before the wedding, Emily and I were going over some final details. She looked me straight in the eye and said, "I really hope you're not planning on making a speech at the reception. Tonight is about Daniel and me. We don't need anyone stealing the spotlight." I was floored. Not only had I been asked by Daniel to give a speech, but the idea that I'd want to steal the spotlight was ridiculous. Still, I let it slide. For my brother's sake, I swallowed my pride and said nothing, and then came the day of the wedding. The ceremony was everything I had envisioned when I wrote those checks and made those calls. Daniel looked so happy standing at the altar, and I felt proud knowing I had played a role in giving him that moment, but Emily's coldness had been simmering all day. When I congratulated her after the vows, she gave me a smile that didn't reach her eyes. When we posed for family photos, she positioned herself so I was barely in the frame. And during the reception, when people praised how beautiful everything was, I noticed her jaw tighten every time someone mentioned my name. It was as if my very presence was an inconvenience, and then, well, you know the rest. Her telling me to leave. The humiliation. The heartbreak, but what made it worse was realizing that Daniel didn't even notice I was gone until much later. By then, Emily had already told people I wasn't feeling well and needed to leave early. She made it sound like I had just quietly bowed out instead of being pushed away. That night, lying in bed replaying everything, I couldn't stop thinking about how much I had sacrificed for this wedding. The money, the time, the energy. And for what? To be treated like an outsider. The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. Emily hadn't just disrespected me, she had used me. She took everything I gave and then tossed me aside the moment it no longer served her. And Daniel, my own brother, hadn't defended me. That was the moment I realized something had to change. I couldn't keep letting myself be walked over in the name of family. I sat up in bed, grabbed my laptop, and pulled out every contract, every invoice, every receipt. And that's when it hit me, the final balances for almost everything were still under my name. The venue cleanup, the catering overtime, the photography rights, even the honeymoon suite upgrade, all of it was set to be charged after the wedding, and guess who had the authority to cancel those payments? Me. For the first time since Emily whispered those words, "I think you should leave," I felt like I had the power again. I closed my laptop and whispered to myself, "If I'm not welcome, neither is my money." What would you do in this situation? Let me know in the comments. I'm curious how others would handle it. The morning after the wedding, I woke up with a heaviness in my chest I couldn't shake. My phone buzzed with notifications, texts from family members gushing about how beautiful the wedding had been, photos already being shared in group chats, people tagging me online and smiling snapshots where I stood in the background. I stared at those pictures, and all I could think was, none of them know the truth. None of them knew I had been asked to leave, humiliated like I didn't belong, but I knew. And Emily knew, and I wasn't going to forget it. I made myself a cup of coffee, sat at my kitchen table, and spread out all the wedding paperwork I had kept neatly filed away for months. The contracts, the receipts, the pending invoices, it was all there. I had been so meticulous about keeping everything organized, thinking I was protecting Daniel and Emily from stress, but now, that same organization gave me something else, leverage. The more I flipped through the paperwork, the more I realized just how much control I still had. The catering service? Only half paid. The rest was due once final headcounts and overtime were calculated. The photographer? I had covered the deposit, but the licensing rights for the extended album package and digital gallery were still pending. Without my payment, all they would get were a handful of low-res preview shots. The venue? Sure, the main rental was covered, but cleanup fees, damages, and additional hours were billed after the event. The honeymoon suite? I had arranged and prepaid for the base room, but the upgrade, the one with the private terrace, champagne service, and spa treatments, that was still on hold until I gave the go-ahead. Everywhere I looked, I saw the same thing. Final payments waiting for my approval, and in that moment, I made a choice. Emily had made it clear I wasn't welcome. So why should my money be? I started with the photographer. I picked up the phone, called the studio, and explained calmly, I'd like to cancel the premium album package. We'll just stick with the basic coverage that was already prepaid. The woman on the other end hesitated. Are you sure? The bride seemed very excited about the deluxe option. I almost laughed. Yes, I said firmly. I'm sure. Next was the florist. They had been scheduled to deliver additional arrangements to Emily's family the following morning, bouquets and centerpieces that were supposed to go home with them as a sort of thank you gesture. I called and canceled the entire order, then the honeymoon suite upgrade. I called the resort, gave them my reservation details, and said, cancel the upgrade. Keep the standard room. The clerk double-checked with me. You're sure? The suite is non-refundable if canceled this close to the date. I'm sure, I replied. Cancel it. With each call, I felt a weight lifting from my chest. It wasn't about revenge, it was about reclaiming my dignity. For months, I had been treated like nothing more than a bank account, my kindness taken for granted. Emily had humiliated me on the very night I had poured my heart and soul into creating. And now, I was done. By the time I closed my laptop, dozens of pending payments had been reversed, canceled, or withheld. I leaned back in my chair, took a deep breath, and for the first time since the wedding, I felt free. But of course, freedom never comes without consequences. The first sign of fallout came 2 days later. Daniel called me. "Hey," he started, his voice unusually tight. "I just got a really confusing call from the resort. They said our honeymoon upgrade was canceled." I kept my tone calm. "Yeah, I canceled it." Silence on the other end. "Then, what? Why would you do that?" I took a breath. "Because, Daniel, your bride told me I wasn't welcome at your wedding. She asked me to leave. After everything I did for you, for both of you, she treated me like an outsider. I'm not paying another cent for people who don't respect me." There was another long silence. Then Daniel sighed. I didn't know she said that to you." "Well, she did," I replied firmly. "And I'm done being used." I thought maybe he'd argue, maybe he'd defend Emily. But instead, he muttered, "I'll talk to her." The call ended there. For a brief moment, I wondered if maybe he understood. If maybe, just maybe, he saw the truth, but that hope didn't last long. Later that evening, I got a barrage of texts from Emily. Paragraphs upon paragraphs of angry words. "How could you do this to us? You're sabotaging our marriage before it even begins. You're bitter and jealous, and you couldn't stand to see Daniel happy without you in the spotlight." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Because for once, I wasn't going to let her manipulate me into feeling guilty. The next day, I started hearing from family members. Some were confused, asking why Daniel and Emily suddenly had unexpected bills piling up. Others were angry, accusing me of being petty and vindictive, but there were also quiet messages of support. A cousin messaged me privately, "Honestly, good for you. She's been acting entitled since day one. Someone needed to put her in her place." Those words gave me strength. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't overreacting. I was finally standing up for myself. Still, I knew a storm was brewing. Emily wasn't the type to let this go quietly, and Daniel was caught in the middle, and sure enough, 2 days later, the confrontation I had been dreading finally came. Be honest, would you have had the courage to make this choice? I knew the storm was coming. I just didn't expect it to hit my front door so soon. 2 evenings after I canceled the last of the payments, I heard a sharp knock. Not just a knock, more like pounding. Reluctantly, I opened the door, and there they were, Daniel and Emily. Emily's face was red with anger, her jaw tight, her eyes blazing. Daniel stood beside her, tense, almost like he wasn't sure if he should be there. Before I could even greet them, Emily pushed her way inside. "How dare you?" she spat, her voice dripping with venom. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" I shut the door calmly, refusing to let her theatrics intimidate me. "Yes," I said simply. "I do." Daniel's voice cracked in frustration. "You canceled the honeymoon upgrade? The photography? The florist? What the hell, man?" I took a breath, looked directly at my brother, and said, "Daniel, your wife told me I wasn't welcome at your wedding. She humiliated me in front of everyone. I gave everything I had, money, time, energy, just to make your day perfect. And in return, she asked me to leave. Why would I keep paying for people who don't respect me?" Emily scoffed loudly. "Respect you? You were everywhere. Every detail, every plan, every conversation, you inserted yourself into all of it. People were talking more about you than about me, and it was supposed to be my night. I just wanted you gone because you couldn't let us have our moment." Her words stung, but I kept my voice steady. I wasn't trying to steal your moment, Emily. I was trying to make sure Daniel had the wedding he dreamed of. If people mentioned me, it's because I was the one running around making it happen. You never lifted a finger. Daniel shifted uncomfortably, caught between us. Emily, come on, that's not fair. He did handle a lot. Emily spun toward him, her voice sharp. Don't take his side. He undermined us from the start. I couldn't hold back a bitter laugh. Undermined you? I bankrolled your entire wedding. I covered every vendor, every decoration, every extra touch you wanted. Without me, you wouldn't have had half of what you enjoyed that night. Emily's eyes narrowed. You think money gives you the right to control us? That's why I wanted you gone. You were making it about you. And now you've sabotaged our memories because your ego got bruised. My patience snapped. No, Emily. I pulled the payments because you showed your true colors. You never wanted me there. You never appreciated anything I did. You used me, and when I was no longer convenient, you tossed me aside. The room fell into tense silence. Daniel rubbed his temples like he was trying to process everything. I just don't understand why you didn't talk to me first, he muttered. I turned to him, my voice softening. Because you didn't even notice I was gone, Daniel. While I was outside, humiliated, you were smiling, dancing, completely unaware. Do you have any idea how that felt? For a moment, I saw guilt flash across his face. But Emily cut in before he could answer. This is pathetic, she snapped. You're jealous of us. You couldn't stand that your brother found happiness without you being the center of his world. That's what this is really about, isn't it? Her accusation cut deeper than I expected. But instead of arguing, I just shook my head. If that's what you believe, then nothing I say will change your mind. Daniel stepped closer, his voice pleading. Look, can't we just fix this? Maybe pay the vendors back? Emily's furious, but I don't want this to tear us apart. I locked eyes with him, my heart heavy. Daniel, I love you. You're my brother. But I won't set myself on fire to keep you warm anymore. If Emily can't respect me, then I won't keep pouring myself into a relationship where I'm treated like garbage. Emily rolled her eyes and grabbed Daniel's arm. We're leaving. I can't listen to this anymore. She stormed toward the door, dragging him with her, but just before leaving, she turned back, her voice dripping with venom. You'll regret this. You've just destroyed your own family. The door slammed, and suddenly, the house was silent again. I stood there, heart pounding, adrenaline rushing through me. Did I regret it? No. Not even a little, because for the first time, I had stood up for myself. Later that week, the fallout spread. Word got around fast in the family. Some called me selfish, accusing me of ruining Daniel's big day. Others admitted Emily had been out of line from the beginning. The family was split right down the middle. My mom called me crying, begging me to apologize for the sake of peace. My aunt sent a long message about how weddings are stressful and I should have just let it go. But then my cousin texted, good for you. Someone had to show her she can't walk all over people. It seemed everyone had an opinion. But only Daniel's mattered to me. A few nights later, he called. His voice was quieter this time, almost broken. I don't know what to do, he admitted. I love her, but I hate what she did to you. Hearing the pain in his voice nearly broke me. But I stayed firm. Daniel, you have to make your own choices. But remember this, marriage is supposed to be about building each other up, not tearing people down. If she can't respect your family, what happens when it's you she stops respecting? He didn't respond right away. Just silence on the other end. Finally, he whispered, I need time to think. We hung up, and I sat there staring at my phone, knowing nothing would ever be the same again. If you were watching this moment unfold in person, what would you be thinking? Drop your thoughts below. The days after that confrontation felt like walking through smoke after a fire, quiet, heavy, and filled with the lingering smell of something burned. Emily made good on her threat to poison the family against me. At every gathering, she painted me as the selfish brother who couldn't stand to let them shine. She told people I canceled the payments out of jealousy, not hurt. And to my dismay, some believed her, but the ones who really knew me, the ones who had seen me running around on the wedding day, making sure everything went smoothly, stood by my side. They said it out loud, he gave more than anyone else. Emily's just mad she couldn't control him. That gave me some comfort, but the pain was still there. Daniel and I barely spoke for weeks. Every time I saw his name on my phone, I hoped it was the call where he'd say he saw through her lies. But more often than not, it was just silence. Then, one night, he finally came over. No Emily, no theatrics. Just him. He sat on my couch, his shoulders slumped, looking more exhausted than I'd ever seen him. I don't know what's happening to me, he admitted. Ever since the wedding, it's been constant fights. She keeps saying I need to cut ties with you to prove my loyalty to her. The words landed like a punch. And what do you think? I asked quietly. Daniel looked at me, his eyes heavy with conflict. I think I can't lose my brother. Not like this. You've always been there for me. Even when I didn't notice, even when I didn't thank you, you were the one holding everything together. I can't just throw that away. For the first time in weeks, I felt my chest lighten. Daniel, I'll never make you choose. I just want you to be happy. But if she keeps forcing you to cut off the people who love you, you need to ask yourself why. He nodded slowly, like the weight of the truth was finally sinking in. We talked for hours that night. Not about Emily, not about the wedding, just about us. Childhood memories, stupid fights we used to have, the dreams we once shared. For the first time in a long time, it felt like I had my brother back, but reality still hung in the air. Emily wasn't going anywhere, and I knew she'd double down. She wasn't the type to admit defeat. Sure enough, the very next week, Daniel told me she'd given him an ultimatum: it's either him or me. I held my breath, waiting for the blow, but Daniel surprised me. He looked her in the eye and said, if you can't accept my family, maybe you don't really accept me. Her fury was explosive. I won't go into details, but let's just say it was the beginning of cracks he could no longer ignore. I didn't celebrate. This wasn't about winning. This was about watching someone I loved realize that the person he trusted most wasn't really in his corner. Months have passed since then. Daniel and Emily are still together, for now. But things aren't the same. He sees her clearly now, and whether he admits it or not, he's already questioning everything. As for me, I've moved forward. The pain of that wedding night will never fully leave me, but it taught me a lesson I'll never forget. Love without respect is just exploitation, family without boundaries is just control, and sacrifice without appreciation? That's just self-destruction. I gave everything for my brother's happiness, and in the end, I discovered who truly valued me, and who only saw me as a wallet to drain. Would I do it again? Honestly, no. Not in the same way. I've learned that helping doesn't mean erasing yourself. Supporting doesn't mean being invisible. So if you're listening to this and you've ever been taken for granted, hear me, you are allowed to stop giving. You are allowed to walk away. You are allowed to demand respect, because at the end of the day, it's not about money, or weddings, or appearances. It's about dignity, and that's one thing I'll never let anyone take from me again. So, Reddit, what do you think? Was I wrong for canceling the payments? Was I too harsh, or was it the only way to show I wasn't a doormat? Let me know your thoughts, and if you've ever had a wedding, or a family event, blow up into unexpected drama, I want to hear those stories too. This has been one of the hardest chapters of my life, but maybe sharing it will remind someone out there that standing up for yourself is never the wrong choice. Thanks for listening.